Well, as the leftists who dominate our education system know, the future of Western liberalism will not rely on us retaining the culture that made our current freedom and prosperity possible, a culture that is based on many centuries of intellectually liberating philosophical thought that was, until recently, still evolving. Rather, the future is about shaping an entirely new society, based on revolutionary ideas that were planted by academics in universities in the 1960s, eventually migrated to high schools and have now spread into primary schools to indoctrinate the malleable minds of our society's youngest people. The first generation to have spent their entire education in this system, from year one all the way through to graduation 2 decades later with a PhD examining the immutable evil of white privilege, are now assuming positions of power and authority. And aren't we lucky to be around to witness it? There is barely a politician, bureaucrat or corporate executive anywhere in Australia now who doesn't feel compelled to signal their allegiance to these fashionable but largely unproven utopian ideals. Indeed, many of them are paid handsomely to do so, safe in the knowledge that they will be sipping cocktails inside their fortified homes when the consequences of this folly materialise in the shape of entire communities reduced to hostile, impoverished tribes roaming the streets looking for places to loot and people to kill. That's not an exaggeration. We've seen it already in the Black Lives Matter riots in the United States in 2020. In which dozens of people were killed and billions of dollars worth of property was destroyed. The grievances that propelled those riots were endorsed here by none other than the Victorian government, which gave a green light to protesters culturally appropriating American ghettos and whinging about the fact that apologising for past transgressions will never be enough. After those marches were over, the Victorian government returned to its normal business of arresting people for making Facebook posts and shooting others in the back with rubber bullets for the audacity of wanting their God-given freedoms back. Since those COVID lockdowns ended, the defining characteristic of Australian politicians has been timidity. It was on full display this month when British women's rights campaigner Kellie J. Keane did a public speaking tour of several Australian capital cities. Apart from Victorian State Liberal MP Moira Deeming, UAP Victorian Senator Ralph Babbitt and Pauline Hanson and Malcolm Roberts of One Nation, no MPs offered Keane support for her defence of women to have private spaces away from invariably aggressive, angry men dressed as women. Supporting such a basic concept should have been the least we could expect from our elected representatives. But instead, we were treated to politicians being outright hostile towards Keane. This is what passes for courage in Australian politics these days. Here is the charming Greens Senator Nick McKim graciously explaining to Kellie J. Keane, otherwise known as Posy Parker, what he thinks of her.
And we need to call Posy and Kimberley and their ilk what they actually are, and that is trans exclusionary right-wing dropkicks. TERDS. They're not TERFs, they are turds, and that's how we should describe them.